Invisible threads. The unspoken connection between Dakota Johnson and Jamie Dornan. There are connections that announce themselves loudly, through declarations, headlines, and undeniable gestures. And then there are others. Quiet. Subtle. So finely woven that most people only sense them without ever being able to name them. The bond between Dakota Johnson and Jamie Dornan belongs to the second kind. No confessions. No confirmations. No dramatic revelations. Yet for years, audiences have felt something, an undercurrent beneath interviews, a pause too long before a laugh, a glance that lingers just a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Not enough to accuse, not enough to prove, but enough to wonder. These are the invisible threads. The space between words. To understand their connection, one must begin not with what they say, but with what they don't. In joint interviews, Dakota often answers first. Jamie listens, not passively, but attentively. His gaze doesn't drift. His posture doesn't relax. He watches her speak as if he's waiting for a familiar rhythm, already knowing where her sentence will land. When he responds, it's rarely contradictory. Instead, it complements, finishes thoughts, softens edges. There is an ease there, not rehearsed, not performative. It's the ease of two people who don't need to impress each other. Dakota's stillness, Jamie's restraint. Dakota Johnson is not expressive in obvious ways. Her emotional language is minimalistic, a raised eyebrow, a half smile, a silence that speaks louder than words. Jamie Dornan, by contrast, is expressive by containment. He laughs easily, yes, but his seriousness is quieter, deeper. When he holds back, it's deliberate. Put them together, and something curious happens. They mirror each other's restraint. In moments where Dakota withdraws, Jamie softens. When Jamie hesitates, Dakota steadies. Not control, not dependence. Balance. The gaze that doesn't perform. Public figures are trained to look at cameras, to connect with audiences through lenses. But every now and then, a gaze escapes the choreography. There are moments, brief, almost accidental, where Jamie looks at Dakota not as a co-star, not as a colleague, but as if checking something internal. As if silently asking, "Are you okay? Are we aligned?" Dakota, in return, doesn't always meet his gaze immediately. Sometimes she delays, then looks back with a look that is unreadable but deeply present. This is not flirtation. It's not nostalgia. It's recognition. Shared history without ownership. They share a cinematic legacy that shaped both of their careers profoundly. That kind of shared experience leaves marks, whether acknowledged or not. What's striking is how neither tries to claim it. Jamie never positions himself as the central figure of their shared fame. Dakota never diminishes her autonomy within it. Instead, they speak of the past with a tone that suggests, "We survived something together." Survival bonds differently than success. Emotional memory lives in the body. Psychologists often say the body remembers what the mind chooses to forget. Watch how Jamie adjusts his posture when Dakota enters a room. Notice how Dakota's voice subtly lowers when she addresses him directly. These aren't conscious decisions, they're reflexes. Not rehearsed intimacy, but residual emotional memory. The silence after laughter. Laughter is easy, silence is revealing. After shared jokes, there's often a pause between them, a silence that doesn't rush to be filled. They don't scramble for the next line. They let it sit. That silence isn't awkward. It's familiar. Public personas, private alignment. Publicly, they occupy very different spaces. Dakota is enigmatic, ironic, often detached from Hollywood spectacle. Jamie presents warmth, accessibility, and grounded sincerity. Yet when they share space, these personas soften toward each other. Dakota becomes less guarded. Jamie becomes less performative. It's as if, together, they allow themselves to be closer to who they actually are. Emotional intimacy without possession. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of their connection is what it lacks. There is no sense of ownership. No territorial behavior. No need to define or label. What exists between them feels emotionally intimate, but not consuming. A bond that doesn't demand more than it is. Why it feels so palpable. Audiences feel their connection because it is unfinished, unclaimed, and undeniably human. It reflects something most people recognize but rarely experience openly. A deep emotional alignment that exists outside romance, outside obligation, outside narrative resolution. It doesn't resolve. And that is precisely why it lingers. The threads remain. Years pass, careers evolve, paths diverge. Yet when Dakota Johnson and Jamie Dornan appear in the same frame, whether physically or in memory, the invisible threads remain intact. Not tightened. Not severed. Just there. Quiet. Unspoken. Unclaimed. And perhaps that is the most profound bond of all. What we see in them. Ultimately, what fascinates us about Dakota and Jamie is not who they are to each other, but what they reflect back to us. They remind us that some connections don't need explanation. That not all intimacy demands expression. That sometimes the deepest bonds live not in declarations, but in glances never meant to be noticed. Invisible threads. Still holding.